Good day. Hello, students. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay, great. So I think we can start our today's lab. And let me share my screen. Just a second. Okay, so you see the presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So um, let's start. Just yes. So we will continue our UML sessions. Basically, this is the last session about UML. So we will finish covering UML by sequence diagrams. So, um, but there are, of course, many more types. If you search on the Google UML diagrams, but the diagrams that we have covered with you, they are the most important ones. So you can actually do requirements engineering and uh, modeling your, let's say, project or system with these diagrams. Okay, so let's start with sequence diagrams. So sequence diagram is also behavioral type of UML diagram. So basically it addresses two questions within the project, within your project, how and in what order a group of objects work together. So software developers or even non-software, let's say specialists such as business professionals also can use this diagram in order to show how their system, the element of their project work together. And uh, if we think about, if you have a question, okay, why do we need uh, such a sequence diagram, because we have a lot of other diagrams similar to this, right? But this particular sequence diagrams cover some, let's say, spatial aspects of the requirements engineering. First of all, okay, you can represent the details of a UML use case. Uh, and you can also introduce another dimension to your uh, system. This is time dimension, we will see in the latest slides. Uh, and also see how objects interact with each other over time. And of course, you can plan and understand the, let's say, required functionality or features within your system object. If we look at sequence diagrams at a glance, there are two dimensions. First of object dimension, horizontal way, and time dimension, which is represented in the vertical way. So object dimensions starts from left to right, and they show the objects within your system. I mean, elements of your system that has some interactions, right, in your system. And in the second dimension, which is time dimension, so you can show uh, in this dimension how these objects are behaving within your system, right? So if we look, uh, if we put everything together and see how these things work, this is the overall picture how you can represent a sequence diagram in the example of hotel system. So you see here we have in the horizontal, let's say, axis, we have objects, right? If you look at the top, we have window, UI, window, which is the object of UI, hotel chain or hotel, right? So these are basically objects. And if you look at this diagram on the vertical axis, right, over vertical axis, you see how they are interacting over time. So time, it doesn't mean that specific time, but this is the duration of some operation. Okay, so uh, this shows how these operations can be in some order. I forgot to say, if you didn't uh, enter it into this meeting within your university email, please do, because in the previous lab, some guys registered with some Gmail or mail.ru accounts. That's why I had some problems. So if you have some other accounts other than university, so please so re-enter with your university emails. Okay, so let's continue our sequence diagram. So we see that here we have a lot of different notions, right? Uh, I mean, notations. So let's introduce them. Let's introduce each of them and let's see how they work. So first of all, actor. Actor, we covered in the previous let's say diagram. This is basically stakeholder of our project, right? So anything or anyone that has some interaction with our system. But in sequence diagram, actor represents a type of role. Okay, so if you have manager object within your system, and manager has several, let's say, roles such as administrator or observer or inspector, etc. So each of these roles should be represented uh, separately. Okay, so you will represent actor with this, let's say, stick, right? Human like stick, and its lifespan is this vertical uh, box. So the next element is in notation is lifeline and activations. These are basically how our objects live, or the operations of objects can be shown within the vertical axis or within the time dimension, right? So we can see that. So lifeline, you can represent individual participant in the interaction, right? So you will represent by this blue box, and you should write the title of this lifeline. And activations, basically, whenever some operation is started and operation ends, so you have to represent this duration within this blue, let's say, vertical box. So basically, this is the life cycle of that operation. So within your system, you may have several such operations, several such activations. Okay, so the next notation. So we will start messages. Messages are basically communication between lifelines. Okay, so if we have several lifelines, or if we have several objects within our system, so message, with the help of messages, you can introduce communication between them. So call message is basically uh, you will start some operation in the second or in the next, let's say, object, and return message is represented by the second, let's say, this picture in the bottom picture. This is basically carries back the information to the caller. So the next annotation is self message. You can call some operation within the same lifeline, right? So this is basically you're calling the operation of, um, let's say, itself. And then we have recursive message, right? So it's also, it's like self message, but it can be called multiple times until some criteria is met. Then we have create message. So please pay attention. This, let's say, arrow is done with dashed line. So this means that we are creating uh, or instant instantiation, instantiating another, let's say, lifeline. So whenever this message is sent, another lifeline is created, and the opposite is destroyed. Whenever this message is sent to some, let's say, target, the lifeline is destroyed. So this is basically how you can describe the life cycle of particular operation. So whenever, in order to start some operation, you have to send some event, right? So then for to the response of this event, you may execute some, let's say, actions, and you can return back some result. And so this, you can represent the lifeline or life cycle of some operation. And we so this is basically message and focus control. This is the description of this diagram. You can read in details. And we also have fragments. We can also introduce fragments within the sequence diagram. So this is basically, you can think of it as a module, but this fragment has some, let's say, property. For example, uh, or type. For example, we have this ref, assert, loop, break, alt, opt, and neg, these types for the fragments. And if you can read about these fragments in details in this slide. So for example, you can also introduce loops within fragments with the loop operation. So sorry. So if you put everything together, this is basically how fragments work. That is, for example, we can do some operations within loops, right? And you will introduce then a loop fragment or some other fragment. And loop, and also pay attention that one fragment has several objects, right? So this is uh, very useful if you have some complex operation to be, let's say, structured. Then we can also use sequence diagram overall for use case scenarios. So basically, use case scenario is basically description of your use case. What is use case? We have talked about in our earlier sessions, right? So if you um, if we look at the overall picture, so basically, if we have search book use case, you can you can describe this use case within sequence diagrams in the following way, right? So you have some objects, actors interacting in this use case, and you have some operations, how objects are interacting with each other, and so on. So this is overall, uh, let's say, um, picture how you can describe describe use case scenarios, right? Uh, so overall, when to use sequence diagram, or what are the let's say main benefits of sequence diagram. So sequence diagram, you can think of it is it's a bit higher level of let's say before coding, let's say, level. uh, Non-coders or non-programmers can also do such sequence diagrams if they learn these notations, if they learn the sequence diagram, right? So, and also it's easier to represent the interactions within your system, right? You can describe the process and sequence diagram, and you can justify your idea to other departments if you are working in some company, right? And usually they have some let's say inner policies how you should, let's say, advocate your idea. So this is overall sequence diagram. And in our projects in the labs, we may not use the sequence diagrams too often, but I hope that it will be useful for you to think of, let's say, how you can structure your ideas in a more, let's say, nice way, in a more nicely way. So we have ended UML sessions. So basically, this is the end. If you have questions, please ask, or we will go to the practical sessions. Any questions? Okay.
Everything seems to be clear till
Yeah.
this moment.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalia. Okay. Thanks. So I will stop the presentation. By the way, the presentation is on the Moodle, and we will go to the practical session. Just a second. Okay. So it is ready, I think. Okay, so we will start assignments. Basically, by the way, this slide is also available on the Moodle. So there are some links uh, you can get from the Moodle. Okay, so uh, so this is the task one. So you have to create use case diagram. So it will be divided into teams. Let's say 3 people in each team, or uh, if we have some, let's say, some more people, there might be some exceptions, right, in the number of people in the last group. So a topic will be given to each team. So um, this is the topic sheet. If you look at the next, let's say, um, next tab, we have uh, topic, project title and description, right? So this is for the first group, project title and description. So we may have up to 9, I think, groups, and we have project title and description. So what is your task? Your task is to f- you have to identify actors and use cases within the project description and make use case diagram. So you have your diagram should contain at least 3 use cases. Okay, and please use draw.io or similar to that to create your diagrams uh, so that your diagram is accessible via link. Okay, so because in the first spreadsheet, in the first tab, you have to put the link to the diagram. I'm not sure how many teams. Okay, so we have 7 teams by 3. Yes, because we are 21, right? Or we are 20 without me. So we will have 6 or 7 teams. So you have to put your diagrams, and in the next, let's say, uh, the next task is to give feedback to your colleagues. I mean, to the next, let's say, team. So please, guys, I will divide you into groups. So download this or open this as, the spreadsheet and slides, and you have to start working. And any questions before we start?
Are we going to be divided randomly?
Yes, you're going to be divided randomly, and this task, by the way, it's not graded. I mean, you will not earn some real points, but of course, if your team uh, produces some, let's say, output, of course, you will get bonus points. Any questions again? And also, you have to follow the correct notations. Okay, so we have, for example, include and extend, for example, um, dependencies, right, between use cases. So please be careful and do not break the rules. And your use case should follow should be within the description. So mm, if you do not have questions, I will. Okay, I can divide you into breakout rooms. I will be on the main session, so you can go back to the main session if you have some questions and ask them, and go back to your breakout room. So uh, time is started. So it's, I think, one. We can think that we are starting at 5 minutes past 1 p.m., right? So we will finish at 1:45. So I will just um, uh, I will minutes. Okay. So you have your task. Please start working on the task. I think yes. So only the seventh room will have 2 guys. Okay. You are, I think, invited. It's so I will close the breakout rooms. Yes. Okay. So, guys, do you have any questions? Can you share your experience, whether you have some problems or some other, let's say, experience while doing this activity?
Well, we've done use case diagrams before, so I guess it wasn't that new.
Okay, great. So, by the way, have you also covered other use case diagrams, class diagrams, and others?
I don't think so.
Mhm. Okay, great. So next week we will, I will also give some feedbacks to your use cases if necessary. Then we will also have such, let's say, practice sessions. If you have questions, please ask. Otherwise, I think we can finish our labs.
You said next week. What are we going to do tomorrow?
Oh, yes, yes, tomorrow, yes. So in tomorrow's session. Okay. If you have no questions, so thank you for your participation. So today's lab is over. So, but still, I will be there if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Bye.